You can run intervals, you can smash long runs, but if you are not practicing your marathon pace, you are leaving minutes, potentially that holy grail PB on the table. Today, I'm going to break down exactly why marathon pace runs are so powerful, how you can program them into your build, and the mistakes that most runners make that stop these runs from working. I'm Nick Hancock, UK Athletics and UESCA certified running coach. I'm a sub 3 hour marathoner, 250 at London this year, and I'm an ultramarathon podium finisher too. I coach athletes training for everything from big city marathons to 100 milers, multi-day events, and if there's one session that consistently predicts race day success in the road marathon, is that marathon pace work. Done right, it's not just a practice run. It's the bridge between all of that training that you've done and your performance on race day. So number one, why marathon pace matters. The marathon is unique. That road marathon, I say it all the time, it is the hardest distance and discipline in running to train for, in my opinion. It's a lot of road miles. It's even harder than training for a 100-mile trail race. It is unique. It is not a sprint. It's not a jog. It sits right in that kind of that red line of sustainability. You know, that highest pace that you can hold without detonating. There are studies out there, and for a long time, that we have understood that marathon performance is predicted by three things: your VO2 max, your lactate threshold, and your running economy. And marathon pace training touches on all three of them. Specific training near race pace improves time to exhaustion and performance more than that generic base mileage, getting out for that long run. Practicing marathon pace involves and improves fuel utilization, efficiency, pacing tolerance. So in short, if you want to nail that 26.2 miles, you need to teach your body and your brain to live at that pace. So section number two, what a marathon pace run actually is. Now, it sounds obvious. Just run at your marathon goal pace, right? Well, there are layers to this. Aerobic demand. So marathon pace is usually around about 80 to 88% of VO2 max for well-trained runners. Fuel balance. You are training glycogen management and fat oxidation as well. Neuromuscular, you are hard wiring stride mechanics, cadence, posture, all at that goal speed. And then mentally, you are learning what that pace feels like under fatigue, learning to stay relaxed when the going gets tough. It is not just practice, it is adaptation too. So number three, when to actually introduce them. Marathon pace work is definitely not for week one. You need a base first. So when I talk about base building, the sort of the thoughts of old are lots of easy miles, as much as you possibly can. But one thing that a lot of people forget to do is actually to include some of that neuromuscular base training too, which means doing things like your stride work, your hill sprints, some very short, sharp, hard sessions that are going to teach your body to be able to deal with the demands of intervals getting longer. When it comes to introducing your marathon pace sessions, you don't really want to be doing that until around 8 to 10 weeks out at the most from race day. You need to build them progressively until the taper. Earlier than that, you need to be focusing on aerobic mileage, that strength, and from the base, you go into a build phase, and that's where you focus on things like threshold work, those VO2 max sessions, before we start getting into doing the marathon pace work. So number four, where do you introduce them and how do you do them? So here's the framework that I use with my athletes. The first phase is 10 to 8 weeks out from a race day, and we'll do some short blocks at marathon pace. Sometimes during long runs, or sometimes we'll do a session earlier on in the week where it's sort of like 4x2K at marathon pace. Another example that you can do during a long run, you could do something like 2x3 miles at marathon pace within a 14-mile run. The phase two We then start increasing the time at that pace. Longer continuous efforts. For example, you might do 8 to 10 miles at marathon pace midway through a long run. And then phase 3, we'll do specific long runs. This is your last few long runs before the big day. And this is marathon pace under the real fatigue of all the training that you've done. So what we might do is something like, 10, 16 miles. And then we'll add the last 4 to 6 to 8 miles maybe at marathon pace. A really good example that I give as well, 22 miles, alternating 2 miles easy, 2 miles at marathon pace. And then the peak phase, 3 to 4 weeks out, those big confidence builders, 18 to 20 miles with 10, 12 miles at marathon pace, or there's one I love to give the people more at the faster end, which is the Canova session, which is 10K, 8K, 6K, 4K, 2K, 1K at marathon pace. Tough session, but a good one. Some common mistakes that people make with marathon training. Number 1 is running them too fast. If your marathon pace run drifts into half marathon pace, you're kind of missing the point a little bit. The other mistake is doing them every week from the start. If you overload too early, you are going to burn out. You're going to get fed up of doing them. Number 3, forgetting fueling. Marathon pace runs are a perfect time to practice those gels, those hydration. Don't wait until race day. Use them as test beds for where you are going to be at on race day. And then finally, treating them as though they're actually races. You should finish tired but not destroyed. If you're crawling home, then you went too hard. Simple as that. Section number 6, one of the biggest benefits is practicing your race day nutrition. There are studies out there. There was one by Burke et al. In 2011. Carbohydrate availability, it is a limiting factor in endurance performance. And I am a strong believer that a big reason why we're seeing all these world records dropping at the moment, apart from some of the additional help, is because of the revolution in carbohydrate utilization during training. Test that gel frequency out in your training. You want to be aiming for 60 to 90 grams of carbohydrates per hour of running. Practice drinking at race pace. Experiment with flavors and textures to avoid those GI issues on race day. And then by race day, that fueling should feel automatic, to the point where you know what gel is in what pocket, which gel have you got to grab. Is it a caffeinated one or is it a normal one? You should know that without having to think about it on race day. Marathon pace versus threshold versus easy. So this is where some people get a little bit confused. Threshold is roughly, for most people, around about that 10K to half marathon pace. It builds lactate clearance, which is too fast for marathon practice. Easy, or zone 1, zone 2, in a 5-zone model, this builds your aerobic base, which is too slow for marathon specificity, but it does build that engine. Marathon pace sits right in between specific, sustainable, and rehearsing what's going to happen on race day, so that you get to that start line and you start running at marathon pace. Your body's like, yeah, I know this. We've done loads of this. Not too much, but we've done loads. Each has its role. The danger is doing everything in the, I don't like to say it, but in that kind of grey zone where, it should be deliberate, not accidental. So here's some sort of practical examples, almost like a 12-week plan. So let's say I'm going to use somebody targeting a 3:15 marathon in this case, okay? Week 12, your base starting to get into some sort of specificity. You might have your last long run, 14 miles, with the last 4 miles at just slightly faster than marathon pace. Week 10, now we're starting to really think about marathon pace because we're doing other speed work as well. But week 10, that long run, you could do 16 miles with 2x3 at your actual marathon pace. Week 8, you could do 18 miles with the last 6 at marathon pace. Week 6, out from race day, 20 miles, 10 continuous at marathon pace. How does that feel? Where are you at? Does anything need to be adjusted? Then week 4, out from race day, probably one of the biggest runs I'd be giving people. You could be doing something like 2 miles easy, 2 miles at marathon pace. 2 weeks out from race day, 12 miles with the last 4 at marathon pace. And then race week, you're doing 20 to 30 minutes, shakeout with strides. That's kind of it for the week. And that sort of pattern, amongst all of the other running and the speed work and things that you're doing, that pattern layers specificity without frying you out. There's not too much of that marathon load. Number 9, marathon pace runs are also confidence builders. They teach you restraint early on, not to hammer that first 5K. That's why I like to give people that, 12, 14, 16 miles or whatever it is, easy, and then do some hard at the end. They teach you patience in the middle miles. They teach you the belief that you can sustain that late pace and you can push at the end when it gets hard. If you've held goal pace for, I tend to see around about 10 miles in training, your brain will probably stop questioning it when you get to race day. It's like, I've done this before. I can do this, without a taper. Final section, the science wrapped up. Let's recap a bit of the evidence. There was a study by Jones and Carter in 2000. Marathon pace training hits those 3 pillars: the VO2 max, your lactate threshold, and your running economy, the 3 key indicators for performance in marathon training and racing. There's a study in 2007, specific pace work beats generic training for race outcomes. A study in 2001, pace-specific training improves substrate use and efficiency. 2011, carb availability is key, and marathon pace runs are that opportunity to practice your fueling. Now, science and practice agree. Marathon pace runs are your biggest hammer when it comes to marathon race day. So make sure you are practicing them strategically. In summary, marathon pace runs, they build specific endurance, they improve your fueling efficiency, your metabolic efficiency. They help you lock in race pace mechanics. They boost your psychological confidence. In some cases, they are not glamorous, they're not flashy, and sometimes they can be quite hard, but they do help you to win races, or certainly win your own race. So with that, here is your challenge. If you are in a marathon block, add one, this week, perhaps add one controlled block of marathon pace into your long run. Doesn't have to be huge, 1, 2, 3 miles. It's going to teach you something about marathon pace running. And if you want a plan that shows you exactly how to layer marathon pace runs into a full build alongside your strength, your intervals, your recovery, and strength's an important one because we are learning that almost that's the 4th frontier of marathon pace running is durability, and it comes from strength. If you want to weave in your recovery, then check out myself, my coaches at Maximum Mileage Coaching, and drop us an inquiry in the link, and one of us would be very happy to speak to you. Trust this process, train smart, and you're going to smash your marathon.